For every Thelma and Louise, there's a counselor or, House of Gucci. You're breaking my heart, Ridley. You're breaking my heart.
Whose country are we in? Mine.
We're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to the next part of my show, and that is my review for Ridley Scott's 2023 historical epic Napoleon, his long-awaited historical epic, chat. And honestly, people have been trying to make a huge historical epic of Napoleon for decades. I mean, Stanley Kubrick spent like 10 years trying to make that movie happen. That didn't happen, chat. We've gotten different, like Napoleon, I think, stories along the way, different adaptations focusing on specific events of his life, but never his entire life, chat, which is what this movie is. And give you a brief synopsis of the film, chat. Napoleon is a satirical Cliff Notes version of the life and escapades of France's most famous and infamous ruler, covering his struggles as a soldier and general and later as Emperor of France, while also detailing his complicated relationship with his wife, the Empress Josephine. Now, before we get into the review itself, talking about the film, what worked, what didn't, chat, I did want to share my thoughts on Ridley Scott as a filmmaker. I've talked about him quite often on my platforms before. I mean, to be positive, he's directed one of my favorite films, if not my favorite movie of all time, which is 1979's Alien. That, to me, is just the ultimate sci-fi horror film. There's, of course, other amazing ones, too, such as, John Carpenter's The Thing. Love that movie, easily in my top 5, top 3, but I don't know, something about Alien, I just gravitate towards Alien. I just really love that film, the world that he helped create, that gritty sci-fi future, taking what kind of George Lucas did of Star Wars, but, having it be like a horror film. I love that movie, and it's simply iconic. But to be completely honest, chat, Ridley Scott, to me, I would describe him as the textbook example of a hit or miss director. And I feel like the latter half of his career, certainly in the, 21st century, not to say he hasn't had some great movies or good movies, he certainly has, but I think it's been filled with more misses than hits, to be completely honest. For every, The Martian, there is a Prometheus or Alien Covenant. For every Gladiator, there is an Exodus or Robin Hood. For every Thelma and Louise, there's a counselor or, House of Gucci. You're breaking my heart, Ridley. You're breaking my heart. While the sheer number of movies he's made is very impressive, I think at this point it's not controversial to say he's made more bad films than good ones over the course of his career. So going into Napoleon, I was really worried about the quality of the movie, especially after hearing there's going to be like a 4+ hour cut of the film that is supposed to be made available on Apple's streaming service in the next few months or so, and how apparently like this film is supposedly covering his entire life, covering most of his life, which I always think is very risky when you're doing like a biopic or historical epic. I mean, that's a lot of material to cover. Like Napoleon's life is quite huge. He did a lot of things, good and bad. Hearing all that made me deeply concerned, and I'm sorry to say that those concerns were made all the more real after watching this movie. While there are a number of impressive battle sequences in the film, and I think the cinematography for them makes them look like truly epic. A lot of people describe those scenes as epic, chat. I mean, it's an epic historical movie. To be honest, this movie is a complete and total mess. There are many things that are wrong with it, and I'm going to detail those things. But the biggest issue that I had was that this was obviously heavily edited to the point where numerous scenes just don't make any sense at all. We'll have a scene where Joaquin Phoenix's Napoleon will be talking to someone, and we get a sense of his relationship with that person. And then a scene later, and maybe like a fade to black or a fade to white, we're told that that relationship is completely different with no explanation whatsoever. Like, you know, we go from Napoleon like loving this guy or loving this character or, you know, vice versa, and then to hating that same person and at war with them immediately afterwards. It feels like there are about like 20 different scenes and another hour missing between those 1.5 scenes that we just saw. It's just horrifically edited to the point where so much of the story is nonsensical and just feels half-baked. The excuse for honestly, the excuse of waiting for the 4+ hour version to truly judge it in its complete and total form, I think that's bullshit. I think that's bullshit. You know, I'm judging the movie based on what I'm actually seeing. It's like, well, you can't judge it yet because, you know, it's not what he originally wanted. You got to wait until like 5 months from now when they put out the, you know, 4+ hour version. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to judge the movie that I'm seeing right now. And I think Ridley Scott and several other filmmakers have been doing this constantly and consistently over a number of years. And to me, I think it's incredibly annoying. And quite frankly, I think it's sloppy filmmaking. This year, we had several other movies that had egregious running times. And I'll tell you right now, the content of those movies did not justify the lengths of those films at all. And personally, I'm of the opinion that they would have worked infinitely better as multi-episode miniseries or a multiple season series of an ongoing like TV show. And, you know, it is so obvious to me that Napoleon should be like a lengthy multi-episode miniseries, right? Where it's like 12 episodes, here we go, an hour each, hour 20 each, here's his entire life. It should be that epic. Or a multi-season show where you cast different, like you have like 4 or 5 seasons, you get like a younger actor to play the younger version, you get like middle-aged guy, then an older version later on. Like that's what they should obviously do, because if you want to cover this guy's entire life, then you're going to need the time to do so. And I'm sorry, but if you're going to cover every aspect of his life and then, you know, honestly start fudging details, you know, just for the sake of convenience, then that to me is sloppy. You know, this movie, it's funny. This movie suffers from being too short, and at the same time, it feels overly long and poorly paced, which is why it's as confusing as it is, in my opinion. You know, moving on to the performances, you know, specifically, you know, Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon Bonaparte and Vanessa Kirby as Empress Josephine. I think Kirby definitely delivers the best performance of the two. You know, despite, honestly, the ridiculous situation she's in and, you know, some of the odd dialogue she's forced to say, and there is some really bizarre dialogue in this movie, she still comes across very charismatic in the role, and she also comes across very cunning, intelligent, and sensual, all within, you know, a scene. You know, and I really like that. I think she'll probably get some award attention for this role of hers. She's great. Her star is rising. Phoenix as Napoleon, on the other hand, is a completely different story. He is a cartoon character in this. And I got the sense he struggled with trying to find the character and settle on a specific way to play it. The movie wants to portray him as a brutal but effective military strategist, but at the same time, he's pretty much a goof. He's antisocial. He's an eccentric. He's a man baby a lot of the times in this movie. And listen, I don't have an issue with that idea, but there's just so many weird, odd choices that I don't feel like they're related to each other. It's almost like Ridley Scott or Joaquin Phoenix, like, play it like really over the top today. Play it like really over the top. Be a man baby. Make weird noises and everything. And then like, I don't know, a couple days later, it's like, you know what, let's make this be serious. Make this like more intimate. So it's like, I'm getting whiplash with his performance because there's nothing that's consistent about it. And so I feel like he didn't really know how to play this role like at all. And, I mean, this is a criticism I think a lot of people have been throwing at this movie. And I mean, I'm always kind of bothered by the fact that, you know, when we do these grand historical epics and like, no matter where we are in the world, whether we're in, you know, France, during the French Revolution or during the age of Napoleon, or whether we're in ancient Egypt, like everyone has a British accent for some reason. It's like, why do we do that? It's like the go-to, this is such a Hollywood thing to do, where the go-to foreign quote unquote accent is always like a British accent, right? And you know, it's like, yeah, I mean, okay, if you're not going to have them speak French, which I don't have a problem with, like, having them all speak French. I think that's totally fine. I don't mind reading subtitles. Subtitles don't bother me at all. I'm okay with that. Or do the French accent. But then the other side of it is, well, maybe they did try to do a French accent, and it sounded terrible. It sounded goofy. You know, maybe they tried to do the Joaquin Phoenix and it didn't work, because you have people that are just in this movie and they're like, even though they're part of the French court, you have some people that sound American, you know, especially that's the case with, you know, Joaquin Phoenix. He sounds like, you know, he's from middle America. Or you have other characters that are just British. And I was just like, well, you're fucking part of the French court. It doesn't make any sense. And so, you know, but at the same time, you got to think like, well, maybe they did try to do that and it didn't work. So it's like, okay, I'll let that slide. But going back to it, I think you know, Joaquin Phoenix's performance just really doesn't work in this movie for me. One of the things that really stood out to me, because everyone's talking about like, oh, the great romance, the fiery, passionate romance of Napoleon and Empress Josephine, like that's a story that should be focused on. I believe it should be, but then there are love scenes between them. There are a lot of intimate scenes between them, but those scenes are ridiculous because of some of the choices of the actors, and also probably Ridley Scott. Like, Napoleon did this thing that was just so weird. I don't know if there is any history of this, that he actually did this, if there are historical records. I mean, this movie doesn't really care about historical accuracy, which again, that's another tightrope. It's like, do you be as historically accurate as possible, or do you know, are you just solely trying to entertain the audience? You know, some directors are able to kind of balance both. You know, not every single historical epic or biographical film is going to be 100% accurate. I understand that. But there's just some choices that are weird. Like anytime, like, you know, Napoleon's like he's lusting for Josephine, he starts doing these weird mouth noises that, it's like, what are you doing? It's like he's like a fish. He becomes like a goldfish. So it's like, I don't know if he ever did that. I know a little bit about Napoleon things, some of his great battles, you know, which they do cover some of those things. And again, those are spectacular. But I don't remember him doing like a weird fish sucking face. I never read that. It sounds a little fishy to me, and just a very bizarre choice. And again, so much of this movie is kind of like a farce. It's not. I think the marketing was really manipulative, to be perfectly honest. Like, the movie is trying to sell this as a truly historical epic. You know, we're going to follow this guy, this very controversial person in history, this great ruler, but you know, this some people consider him like a monster for all the horrible things he did and all the millions of people that he killed. You know, it's like, all right, this will be an interesting portrait. But there's just so much of this movie where it just feels like a satire, and it's kind of a comedy. And but then we'll go after like a really goofy kind of comedic scene. We'll go to, like, you know, an epic battle, and it's like, wow, this is really cool. And we see like his intelligence and his military might, and how he's like, you know, like he's always coming up with these different strategies, and everyone's like, what the hell's going on? We don't know what he's doing, you know. But I'm getting whiplash the entire time. There's another performance I really like. Rupert Everett plays the Duke of Wellington, you know, one of Napoleon's great rivals and enemies. He's actually very good in the movie. He actually feels like one of the few adults in the room when dealing with other characters in Phoenix's Napoleon, or honestly just Ridley Scott's kind of bizarre choices as a filmmaker. You know, I really liked him. I wanted more of him, actually. That would actually be an awesome movie. Like, again, I'm of the opinion, you know, and this is on the outside. You know, that's not like I mean, it's kind of related to a criticism of the film, but I've always liked, like, let's do like a historical epic or a biopic, but it's like of a specific moment in someone's life. You know, because there's so many things that we can cover for Napoleon. Like, you can do a movie just about one of his battles, to be perfectly honest, right? You could do a movie about just his relationship with Josephine, but it would have been kind of cool to, like, have him like a movie focus on one of his like rivals and how they tit for tat and they go back and forth. To me, I think that would have been like really cool. That's like, and then it doesn't have to necessarily be that long. It's just between these two people, right? I think it would have been awesome. But because this movie insists on covering everything, we never really get to sink our teeth into a lot of his relationships outside of Josephine. Or, it's always kind of like a few minutes spent on with him, with this guy, and another few minutes spent with this guy. And then, oh, yeah, the relationship changed. We don't really see why it changed. We're just kind of told, yeah, just stab me in the back. So I'm invading. It's like, but what about you? But like 5 minutes ago, you were like chummy with that guy. What happened? I want to see how that relationship evolved over time, And it doesn't do that. And it doesn't do that, and I think that's frustrating. There are other actors in this film, but some again get barely any screen time, and it feels like so many of their scenes are going to just be included in the 4-hour version that's coming to Apple's streaming service, Apple Plus, and it's just like, well, I don't. But that's not what you're showing me. Why should I have to wait then? It doesn't make any sense. The look of the movie, it's gonna be on the aesthetics. Like I think all the choreography for the battle scenes, I think is really cool. Like that, I think is the thing that works best about the movie. So if you're into historical like battles and strategy and like military history, then you're gonna have some really good scenes to enjoy. I feel like that's what I think the movie excels the most. Outside of Vanessa Kirby, the battle scenes I think are the best thing about the film. However, the look of the movie is very desaturated. Which, to be fair, Scott has often done in most of his movies, in most of his historical epics, to be completely honest. I mean, even Gladiator is desaturated. You look at Ancient Rome in that film, it's mostly blue and gray. Not all the time, but a lot of the time it's like blue and gray. Exodus, same thing. Robin Hood, same thing. Kingdom of the Heavens, same thing. It's an aesthetic choice that he's clearly fond of. But I don't know. I'm not as harsh with that criticism. I still would have liked to have seen like more color in the movie, because it feels like you have all these people wearing these outlandish outfits and things, like the various military uniforms and all that. And it just feels like there's just this gray filter on them, so it kind of makes them look a little more dull than they probably should. Especially, it's kind of weird because, this movie being so, I'm just, thinking of it now, with this movie being so kind of like over the top and farcical and satirical that I'm surprised you wouldn't have like a more vibrant color palette, to be honest, to kind of match how ridiculous this world is, this ridiculous this character is, that his world would reflect his personality and be outlandish and colorful, but it's not, which was a little weird. The content of the movie is irreverent and satirical, but the look of it's not, which is bizarre. But at the end of the day, again, I think this is a very big miss for Ridley Scott, and to be completely honest, I'm really getting turned off by the arrogance of a number of filmmakers who think that their films being longer is better, and that they shouldn't be criticized because they're so and so. I don't adhere to that philosophy, and more often than not, I think it's used as a crutch by directors and filmmakers who I think have gotten lazier and are resting on their laurels, on their past filmography. So Napoleon for me is honestly, it's one of the big whiffs, and I think failures of 2023. Not everything about it is a failure. I think the battle scenes are truly epic, and I think Vanessa Kirby deserves a lot of support. I feel like she made that role her own. And she was able to sell a lot of the stuff that probably would have been ridiculous in the hands of another actor. But there's so much of this film that it represents a lot of the things I dislike about Ridley Scott's lesser films now. And he's just indulging in the stuff that I feel like is honestly really affecting his legacy. Like really, 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 really. I mean, yes, he's always gonna be known for Alien and Blade Runner and Thelma and Louise and Gladiator, but we're gonna look at his other side where it's like, yeah, he's also known for Prometheus and Exodus and Robin Hood and The Counselor and Napoleon. And it's gonna be I guess again that's why I think he's the textbook definition of a hit and miss director. And it's frustrating because I think this could have been great. this could have been really good if it was in a different medium. If this was a television show, it would have been amazing as a 12 episode miniseries, at the very least an hour each, 12 hours to like really kind of like, all right, get immersed with in this world and these characters, or honestly, just a long form TV show, 5 seasons. Let's go. Maybe 8 episodes per season. Let's do it that way, And we cover all the aspects of his life. You could have covered his childhood too. You could have covered all that, but it's just like, no, big historical epic in theaters. I'm like, that doesn't mean it's better. Just because you're a movie doesn't mean that makes you automatically better than like a long form TV show. So I'm repeating my various points, but yeah, chat, for me, Napoleon was a huge disappointment. I'm kind of movied out, to be honest. I saw 2 bad movies back to back. This week I saw Wish, which was just again, speaking of resting on your laurels, that's what Disney's Wish is. That is literally just like, hey, we're just gonna shove our references in your face. And yeah, the movie itself is very generic, and you've seen 1,000 times before. But look, it's Mickey, and it's this thing from Aladdin, it's this thing from Beauty and the Beast, and it's that from. It's like that doesn't make it good. Doesn't make it good. And then with this just feels like a really just disappointing historical epic. But that's just my opinions, chat. It's just my opinions on Ridley Scott's Napoleon. What about you guys? I'm very curious to see what people are saying about this film, because I actually don't know. I know what people are saying about Wish. I'm like, yeah, I agree. But what about you guys? How do you feel about Napoleon? Are you interested in seeing it? For those of you who have seen it, did you like it? Did you love it? I'm actually very curious. Let me know.